Amid rising geopolitical friction and recent military flare-ups, Iran is turning its most powerful allies, China and Russia, for strategic reassurance. Now, on the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in Tianjin, Iranian officials are preparing for bilateral talks with both nations, aiming to reinforce diplomatic ties and economic cooperation following a last month air conflict with Israel and ongoing Western pressure over its nuclear program. Now, what does the future hold for Iran as it deepens ties with both the two world powers? How strong and potentially disruptive could this alliance become on the global stage? And what are the real gains or risks for Iran, Russia, and China in this evolving partnership? Well, as we delve into the details, this and many more will be explored into this flash news. Good afternoon and welcome. I am Tabitha Akor. Let's begin. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in Tianjin, aiming to boost its regional alliances following heightened tensions with Israel and the West, is set to hold today. Now, the meetings come weeks after Iran was targeted in a series of joint Israeli-US airstrikes on nuclear facilities, which the both nations claimed were tied to weapons development. Tehran denies pursuing a nuclear weapons program, insisting its activities are for peaceful purposes. Now, we see that foreign ministers from Iran, China, and Russia are expected to meet during the 25th Shanghai Cooperation Summit with other foreign ministers gathering. Now, the SCO, a Eurasian security and political bloc, includes 10 member states such as China, Russia, India, Pakistan, and newly joined Iran. Now, India's External Affairs Minister during this meeting, in preparation for the meeting, made a statement in a briefing. Take a listen.
What a pleasure it is to meet you during my visit for the SCO Foreign Ministers meeting. India supports a successful Chinese presidency of the SCO. Excellency, our bilateral relationship, as you have noted, has been steadily improving since the meeting of Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping in Kazan last October. I'm confident that my discussions on this visit will maintain that positive trajectory. We have marked, Excellency, the 75th anniversary of the establishment of our diplomatic relations. The resumption of the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra is also widely appreciated in India. Continued normalization of our ties can produce mutually beneficial outcomes. The international situation, as we meet today, Excellency, as neighboring nations of major importance, an open exchange of views and perspectives between India and China is very important. I look forward to such discussions during this.
Now, taking away from India, Iran has increasingly leaned on China and Russia since the United States sanctions were imposed by President Donald Trump's presidency. Now, in recent years, Iran signed a 20-year cooperation pact with Russia and expanded oil trade with China, which now accounts for nearly 90% of Iranian oil exports. We see that the summit also serves as a platform for Iran to highlight the Shanghai Cooperation Organization's growing global influence with a broad agenda spanning economic cooperation, security coordination, and multilateral diplomacy. Now, still on in the Middle East, The United States President Donald Trump has also announced plans to send Patriot missile system to Ukraine to help fend off intensifying Russian air attacks, stating that the European Union will fully cover the cost of the weapons. Take a listen.
Pleasure it is to meet you.
We have one country that has 17 Patriots getting ready to be shipped. They're not going to need them for them. So we're going to work a deal where the 17 will go, or a big portion of the 17 will go to the war site. I have to tell you, Europe has a lot of spirit for this war. A lot of people, when I first got involved, I really didn't think they did, but they do. And I saw that a month ago, and then you were there, most of you, many of you were there. The level of esprit de corps, spirit that they have is amazing. They really think it's a very, very important thing to do, or they wouldn't be doing it. Look, they're agreeing to they're paying for everything. We're not paying anymore. We have an ocean separating us. I said, we have a problem. We make the best stuff, but we can't keep doing this.
Now, the development comes as Trump's special envoy to Ukraine and Russia, retired Lieutenant General Kellogg, arrived in Kyiv on Monday. Ukrainian officials described the visit as part of broader talks expected to explore changes in the U.S. strategy toward the war, now in its fourth year. Ukrainian Presidential Chief of Staff Andriy Yermak confirmed the meeting with Kellogg, saying discussions would center on military support, sanctions, civilian protection, and deeper United States-Ukraine cooperation. Now, last week, President Trump hinted at a major statement on Russia. He has grown increasingly frustrated with Russia's stance, criticizing Russian President Vladimir Putin for continuing military aggression despite diplomatic overtures. Now, while diplomatic talks are on, the Kremlin responded coolly to Trump's announcement. Spokesperson Dmitry Peskov stated that the United States have not ceased. Meanwhile, maybe this could influence their decisions as talks are on. But then, Germany's defense ministry reported encouraging signals from Washington regarding the sale of Patriot systems. Talks are underway to undermine the quantity, recipient, and financing mechanism of the missile defense packages. Now, the negotiations followed German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius' recent visit to the United States. Trump's renewed support for Ukraine marks a notable shift. He had previously criticized aid to Kyiv as wasteful, but allies such as the Republican Senator Lindsey Graham have noted a turning point in Trump's position, aligning more with calls for stronger resistance to Russia's full-scale invasion. In NATO, on the other hand, the Secretary General Mark Rutte is also in Washington for meetings with Trump. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and key lawmakers are also on the way with discussions, and these discussions are expected to focus on transatlantic security and NATO's collective posture toward Russia. According to Ukrainian officials, the Trump administration's evolving approach emphasizes deterrence through strength, signaling a tougher stance after months of ambiguity about America's role in the conflict. Well, as the days moves and the days comes by, we hope that this war comes to an end and diplomatic talks takes a hold. Now, still on in the Middle East, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's governing coalition has been thrown into uncertainty after the United Torah Judaism Party announced its departure over a contentious military draft bill. The move leaves the government with a precarious one-seat majority in the 120-member Knesset. The immediate impact is limited. The UTJ's exit will only become official 48 hours after ministers formally resign, giving Prime Minister Netanyahu a narrow window to reach a compromise or secure new political support. Parliament's scheduled summer recess further delays potential fallout, buying the Prime Minister time to maneuver. Now, the rift emerged over a long-running dispute concerning the exemption of ultra-Orthodox Jews from military service, a sensitive issue that has repeatedly tested Israeli government. Now, should UTG's traditional partner, the Shah's party, follow suit, the coalition would collapse. The likelihood of early elections would then increase, though they would not happen immediately. Israeli law requires either a failed budget vote or a parliamentary decision to dissolve the Knesset processes that take months. Now, past governments in Israel rarely last a full term. Coalitions often depend on alliances between secular, nationalist, and religious factions, which are prone to ideological clashes. Now, Netanyahu's current alliance includes several right-wing and ultra-Orthodox parties, making it especially vulnerable at this time to an internal dispute. Now, following this assertion, what comes next? Political analysts suggest an election could be moved up from late 2026 to early 2026 if the crisis persists. However, Netanyahu has a history of weathering political storms and may yet patch another deal altogether to preserve his leadership. The math underscores the challenge. Likud, Netanyahu's party, has 32 seats. Shas has 11. Religious Zionism has 7. Jewish Power has 6. National Right has 4. And Noam has 1. Total, without the UTH, making 61 seats. Now, the bare minimum for a majority. Now, what are the broader implications in this case? We see that the coalition shakeup comes as ceasefire negotiations in Gaza continues. Public support in Israel has grown for a deal that would return hostages held by Hamas. Still, key far-right members of Netanyahu's cabinet remain opposed to ending the war entirely. Now, while the political crisis may not immediately affect military operations, prolonged instability could hinder long-term strategy and planning, especially as budget debate and war costs mount. Now, despite the growing pressures, Netanyahu's track record suggests he may once again find a way to hold on to at least for now. Now, moving over on African scene in South Africa. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has placed Police Minister Zenzo Muchunu on immediate leave after the nation's police commissioner, General Lanla Mkhwanazi, accused him of meddling in high-profile investigations and shielding organized crime networks. Speaking under oath to a Judicial Commission on Law Enforcement Integrity, Mkhwanazi alleged that Chuno and Deputy Police Commissioner Shadrach Sibia shut down an elite crime-fighting unit that was tracking a wave of politically motivated murders, leaked operational intelligence, and pressed investigators to drop cases that threatened powerful business and political interests. Let's take a listen.
The war that we are facing is so serious that it deals with high-level senior officers within the criminal justice system. Therefore, it is important for us to go into a combat mode. The war that we are facing is so serious that it deals with high-level senior officers within the criminal justice system. Therefore, it is important for us to go into a combat mode. The war that we are facing is so serious.
Well, why this is important at this time? Cyril Ramaphosa said the suspension ensures the commission can work without hindrance, and he also appointed constitutional lawyer Professor Firoz Chachalia as acting police minister. Now, the commission's terms of reference allow it to examine whether present or former officials assisted or protected criminal syndicates, ignored credible intelligence or internal warnings, or gained political or financial benefits from illicit activity. Let's take a listen.
The Commission will investigate the role of current or former senior officials in certain institutions who may have aided or abetted the alleged criminal activity, or failed to act on credible intelligence or internal warnings, or benefited financially or politically from a syndicate's operations.
Opposition parties, including the Democratic Alliance and Economic Freedom Fighters, welcome the inquiry but argue that a leave of absence falls short of accountability. They are demanding that Chunum's outright dismissal should be necessary. But then the suspension intensifies scrutiny of political interference in South Africa's law enforcement agencies, already under pressure after recent revelations of graft in state-owned enterprises. The Commission is expected to begin public hearings later this month, while Parliament Police Portfolio Committee prepares its own oversight sessions. Muchuno has denied wrongdoing and said he will cooperate fully with investigators. Now, the outcome of this investigation could reshape public trust in South Africa's security institutions and also set a precedent for accountability within the highest levels of government. As the country grapples with rising crime and demands for reform, the Commission's findings and the President's next steps may prove pivotal in restoring credibility to the nation's law enforcement and political leadership. Now, still in Africa, in Nigeria, bringing you updates from the news with the former President Buhari, Nigeria's late former President Muhammadu Buhari, who died at the age of 82 years in a London clinic on Sunday. He will be laid to rest today in his hometown of Daura, Katsina State. Buhari first rose to national prominence as a military ruler following a coup in the 1980s. Decades later, he returned to civilian politics and made history in 2015 by becoming the first opposition candidate to unseat an incumbent president through democratic elections. He was re-elected in 2019 and served until 2023. Also, Vice President Kashim Shettima and several government officials traveled to London to coordinate the return of the former president's remains. Arrangements were made in consultation with his family for immediate burial upon arrival in Nigeria. Buhari was widely known for his anti-corruption stance and austere leadership style, which earned him significant support, particularly in northern Nigeria. He often described himself as a converted Democrat, having transitioned from military leadership to civilian rule. Following his presidency, he retired to a quieter life in Daura. His legacy is viewed through mixed lenses. Supporters saw him as a symbol of integrity and discipline, while critics pointed to prolonged absences from office and his detached leadership style. International condolences have continued to pour in. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi acknowledged Buhari's contributions to strengthening ties between India and Nigeria, describing him as a committed partner. Buhari's death comes at a time when Nigeria continues to wrestle with economic instability, inflation, insecurity, and low oil production challenges inherited by his successor, President Bola Tinubu. As the nation prepares to bid farewell, Buhari's passing marks the end of an era defined by both controversy and conviction, leaving a complex legacy in the country's political history. Well, with this, we come to the end of today's Flash News. Remember, we'll be bringing you recent happenings on Undaunted at the top of the hour, 8 p.m. Until then, stay tuned.